But I'd like to show you the book that we're using, and this is called SatiSeva Reimagining Recovery and Support. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about just the appearance of this book, the aesthetics of this book. SatiSeva, that word means mindful. Sati, seva means service. And this is a book of 16 mindfulness practices as a way to inspire a way of being in better service to oneself and by extension to one another. So, with all of these mindfulness practices, the place to begin is in one's own mind, body, and spirit. Everything about mindfulness, present time awareness, is designed to bring intentionality. The way I stand, the way we breathe, everything can be framed around mindfulness and intentionality, including this book. So I want to share with you the color of this book is intentional. And initially, when I was playing around with the color of the book, I really wanted to use kind of a cranberry red color because it represents the the Tibetan Buddhist practice, the Mahayana Buddhist traditions that I practice, that I am engaged in. And I had this flat color, and it was nice. I liked it. The orange lettering represents the Theravada tradition, which is also a practice that I use and glean a lot of wisdom from. And then I played with a purple color, and I don't own anything purple, which is an interesting thing. I'm not a like some people just absolutely love purple. Purple is not my jam. I don't know why, but I wanted to play with that color. And so I was asking people, just sort of getting a survey of what do you guys like? What do you think? And I messaged my family, my siblings, and was like, why am I drawn to purple? Purple is just not my color. And I have a twin brother, and my twin, like, knocked me in the head. And he's like, duh. Purple is the ecclesiastical color of the religion of our youth, which is Catholicism. And so I was like, oh, so innately, sort of um, just my inner wisdom knew to bring forward purple, to celebrate that. And so I decided to create this blend, this purple and this cranberry red, that little combination of the two to represent how spiritual practices have come alive and framed my life. The shape of the spiral that you see, the circle of the spiral, and I'm going to bring this a little bit closer. You can see the spiral itself. You can see that it's encircled. You can see this long line, these four little dashes and the four little dots in between. So the spiral represents, it's one of the most ancient symbols in the known human world. It represents that we will repeat lessons over and over and over again, always from different points of view. While the lesson may seem the same, it isn't. Different moment, therefore different perspective on the spiral. The four dashes represent the four directions, north, south, east, west. The four little dots in between represent the elements of nature, earth, air, fire, water. And then these other dashes along here represent the connection of all of it. It is all connected, and we're in a circle which represents the mystery of life. Everything is intentional. So that's a little bit about just the aesthetics of this book, so that when you hold it, there's something, there's something meaningful in it. Even in the cover, it's not just some publisher picking out a picture that they think will be best marketed and catch people's attention. This is meaningful to me. And I will say that we have a Sangha member who is not here today. We know her very well. She lives in the southern part of the United States in Florida, and she designed this for me and for us. So I'm sharing that with you today because I want to read just a little bit from the SatiSeva book in the chapter of openness. And this particular section is called All is Sacred. All is sacred. So I'd like to invite our chime to sing. And I'd like to invite you into a posture where you can receive the idea that all is sacred. Nothing is outside of the sacred. The dirtiest, filthiest, grossest aspects of life are still part of this sacred mystery. And that, I will confess, is sometimes very challenging to hold. And that is why we practice. So without further ado, welcome everyone. This is SatiSeva, an affinity group associated with Recovery Dharma. SatiSeva was created in 2020 as a way of inviting people in recovery, people who are trying to understand and shift their relationship to habit energy, to be able to practice with friends, family members, allies, professionals. Everybody practicing mindfulness, everybody recognizing that negative habit energy, what many of us call addiction, is universal. All human beings have some expression of negative habit energy. For some people, it shows up in the use and misuse of drugs and alcohol. For other people, it shows up in a negative relationship to food, whether it's an overindulgence or an underindulgence. Some people have a negative relationship and negative habit energy toward intimacy and relationships. Some of us even have negative habit energy related to the way we think. Our thoughts lead to compulsive reactivity. Our thoughts loop and race, and we obsess and become neurotic and anxious and paranoid. This is all habit energy. For me personally, mindfulness has been by far the most effective tool for me to understand myself, and not only understand myself, accept myself fully. And it's not an acceptance because I've somehow become holy and saintly and healed and perfect. It's a way of accepting myself of I'm weird. I do weird things. I have strange thoughts. I'm compulsive. I'm avoidant. I have all kinds of manner of aversion. I live out loud. I can be out there like a Tasmanian devil, and then I can shrink like a turtle in my shell. I run the full spectrum. And my acceptance is simply observing, oh, would you look at that? And then understanding the conditions of why I'm reacting to life in all the ways that I do. We have started on chapter 2, which is the mindfulness practice of openness. And we began this section on Sunday. And I was sharing with you the very beginning of this chapter all about going to a mountain and how people climb mountains not only to challenge and be challenged, but when you think about climbing a mountain, most of the time the motivation is to reach the summit. And that motivation, why are we reaching the summit? It's because it has the broadest view. It's the place of profound openness. The cultivation of openness is to expand our point of view, to gently broaden and allow in that opening space something new to emerge, something else to come forward. One of the things about negative habit energy is how confining it can be. And I mean this quite literally. When I am caught in negative habit energy, particularly if I'm in an emotional state of anxiety or stress, my negative habit energy is I have taxed myself. I haven't taken enough breaks. I've said too much yes. I've planned out my weeks too heavily and I am running on fumes. And when that happens, I clamp down in my mind. My creativity contracts and solidifies. Everything about me feels tight. I have a tendency to get armored and defensive. I get a little bit sensitive. I take things personally. And when I'm armored and protective, I'm hiding. All of this to say, I'm not open. I feel it. Everything feels contracted. So the practice is to soften, to put down a little bit of the armor, to open. And again, the practice of openness is not necessarily about growing tolerance. It's about creating space for something new to grab our attention because life is constantly vying for our attention. And even if something new emerges in space, and even if that something new is terrible, it's still new and it's still sacred. And if we create enough openness and enough space, we'll find that we have the resilience to face it. So, I'd like to read a couple of paragraphs from the section of this chapter, The Mindfulness Practice of Openness, where all is sacred. If you have the book and you'd like to read me, yes. Maybe just sit still. Don't move so much. Okay. Lo is instructing me to sit still. Sorry, everybody. I'm crackling. The boss is back, peeps. All right. I'm going to sit nice and I am going to get nice and still, and I encourage you to as well. We're on page 48 if you want to read along. That was so much fun. We just had a little lullaby arise in our space, in the openness that we've just created. I loved it. It was like a little ditty that really lightened my spirit. Thank you for that. Okay, all is sacred. Turn your gaze inward. Find a posture in your body that feels nice and easygoing. And see if you can say to yourself this mantra: all is sacred. That includes me. I am sacred. Ooh, see how that lands. And if you find yourself feeling a little uggy about it, like, ugh, I don't really like that. That makes me uncomfortable. Remember that's an instrument of peace. That's a tool that we use in the SatiSeva practice. Specifically, it's called ugh to ooh. So if you hear yourself say, all is sacred, feeling pretty good about that one. Now, and that includes me. Ugh, I am sacred. Ugh, ugh. E. Any of the resistance noises that we make. Notice that. And then insert kind of a lyrical, ooh, what's here? Why the resistance? Why am I upset about that? Why does this stir me up? Just a little moment of curiosity, a little levity. Ugh, ooh, all is sacred. And that includes me. I am sacred. There is nothing about you, nothing you've done, nothing you haven't done that lives outside of the sacred. The sacred is an infinite space. And we are all, each of us, a part of it. A mountain, friends, is not the only contemplative landscape that affords us views into openness. Sages and creatives throughout history have spoken about the sacredness everywhere, patiently waiting for us. Any place where awe floods the senses and tests preconceptions to the point of pause or elicits a gasp is all openness. Prairies, forests, rivers, and seas all offer an experience of spaciousness where grounding and centering come as naturally as breathing. Let's take a moment. Use your imagination. What is coming alive as you contemplate your sacred landscape, the place that elicits that feeling of awe, that, wow, that place where you feel both exhilarated and humbled, the place where you are to your core alive. It could be more than one. And in fact, I dare say it might be. And all your imagination needs to do is notice the conditions. What is it about the sea that elicits awe within you and brings you to life? Or what is it about a forest that does the same? For me, both places elicit different conditions of awe, and I seek refuge for different reasons there. The forest for me is a place to cleanse my mind. It is nurturing and softens my armor. The ocean, on the other hand, the sea, is a place for me to release the shadowier emotions. I tend to get melancholy when I go to the sea, and I rather enjoy it. I allow myself to feel blue and weep. The ocean is where I tend to sing sad songs, and sorrowful memories are close. But after my time with the sea, I feel replenished and at ease. Those are some of the conditions for me. Let's take a moment of silence to see what's coming alive for you. What are the open spaces of nature that speak to you, call to you? Another one of my faithful refuges is a high desert prairie. Many years ago, I built a large walking labyrinth in the middle of one of my fields. I have walked miles of sorrow, fear, and joy, sheltered under the glorious, ever changing sky. The way the sacredness of this setting received my feelings and held them without question was enormously healing. Sometimes I would go outside and see my emotionality reflected in the dry prairie grass, or in the unfurling maples, or in the sweetness of the native lilacs. When I practice taking my emotions and moods out of the tight confines of the mind and place them in the spaciousness of nature and the sky all around me, I get a different handle on them. The sacred speaks the language of heart and soul. For instance, resentment for me feels like a vast windswept desert wasteland with prickly flora and creepy crawlies like venomous snakes or stinging scorpions. With this image in mind, I understand why I avoided being open to it. This part of the natural world leaves me feeling completely out of place and unnatural. My body reacts negatively to deserts. My joints, especially my ankles, swell. I feel withered, weak, and incredibly self conscious. But as my awareness linking resentment to desert settings grew, I began to feel playful and open to explore. While I do not enjoy visiting actual deserts, visualizing them helped me become more curious and appreciate the unique beauty I might be overlooking. Flowering cacti, fascinating non poisonous lizards, and the variety of colors and hues in the soil and stone. Once I settled into finding the sacred aspects of an environment I would normally avoid, I started considering ways to creatively add replenishment to this arid and desolate space within. I imagined my resentment in a desert rainstorm, absorbing life giving water. This encouraged me to literally engage with water whenever I was working with resentment. I started drinking various kinds of tea or flavored seltzers and tonics. I also prioritized taking care of my skin with warm aromatic baths. This self-kindness and nurturing helped soothe the stinging quality of resentment. The practice opened me to the possibility of being with resentment in new ways. Even when the resentment remained tenacious as a long, weedy root, I stopped reacting to it with dry, thorny rejection and irritation. Instead, I simply allowed it to be present and offered myself hydrating care to shift my attitude and perspective. Nature and the sky is an instrument of peace. And for those of you who are hearing that term for the first time, these are tools that I have created in these mindfulness practices. And rather than, I like the word tool, but sometimes my relationship to tools can be a little bit violent. I hammer, I chop, I saw, I cut, I pound, and so forth. And for these practices, I wanted something else. I wanted to use something that could sing, that could be silent, that could fill me with wonder And so I decided to call these tools instruments. And I wanted to encourage peace. So these tools are instruments of peace. And in this chapter, the first one that we encounter is nature and the sky. And this is a gentle reminder that whenever you encounter a contracted state of mind, body, or spirit, go to a natural setting, go to nature, spend some time under the delighting gaze of the cosmos. Get your feet on the ground. Turn your gaze to the cosmos. Spend an afternoon in a park. Go to your favorite place, even if it's only in your imagination. Sit outside and imagine that you're in your favorite landscape. Let that be your meditation and let it open your whole being to the idea of sacredness. We are so much more than our worst negative habit energies. And we are so much more than our best, most brilliant successes. We are these complex combinations, resilient, tenacious, wise. That is our truest nature. We come from many generations of survivors, thrivers, innovators, creatives, brilliance, brightness. The list goes on and on. And here we are in this blink of a moment with an invitation to tap into the ever present energy of sacredness, to open to it, to receive it, to use what you receive to change, to grow, to heal, to question, to wonder. We can't do any of this in the tight confines of a haunted mind. Nor can we do this alone. But sometimes being with the sacred is a solitary practice. And this may sound paradoxical, and it is. So when we go to our favorite natural setting, even in solitude, sacred solitude, while we are alone, we are with all the world. We are with an ancient unfurling that has been going on since beginningless time. And we get to tap into that timelessness, that infinite quality. It is alive everywhere, outside of us and within. I'd like to offer this one perspective um, to just contemplate and bring with you as part of a sacred solitude practice. And this is some wisdom that comes from an ancient philosopher. I believe this is Heraclitus. And the wisdom is this: the journey of life is but a quarter inch long. So just take that in for a minute. Because if you have my mind, I think of the journey as this like miles and miles and miles of lone, desolate road, sort of like that scene from Forrest Gump in the desert. So the journey of life is but a quarter inch long. And it is many miles deep. I love that. I love that, to challenge the mind, to open it a little bit, to think about things in a new way. So rather than looking out at the great expanse of openness, which is very important to do, now take that vastness, bring it in close, and allow it to bring you deep. You don't have to think of the depth as being buried or suffocating or the pressure of the ocean or anything like that. Think of it as just the spaciousness of going into the cosmos. Deep, deep, deep. Or you can take it into a single cell of your body and then go as far as you can to its subatomic parts. Go deep and see where that takes you. Sometimes, friends, in my imagination, what I do is I go to my prairie, I go to one of my fields, and I just sit on the earth and I think about what it would be like to just take a 1 inch auger and just spiral down into the center of the earth. And what would I find? What would I see? And I know that in my part of the prairie, the first several layers of earth, they're really quite magnificent to study. And it's extraordinary how the earth serves as a natural filter for the water in the aquifer that's hundreds of feet below. And so I go through this loamy, sandy, and then basalt rock, glacier rock. And then I hit this opening where there's an underwater river. So I hit water. And then I go beneath that, and that extends beyond my imagination. I have no idea what the stone is there, but I just kind of keep going and playing with it. Keep going and keep going, millions and millions, billions of years. And then eventually, I'm going to hit the center of the earth where it's really hot. And dare I say, it's got an energy and a force and a heat similar to a star. When I go deep, contemplating my own habit energy, the stories I tell myself, and look at the conditions that drive my actions. And I get beyond all the layers that are so taxing sometimes in their negativity and diminishment, living small. And I keep going and unearthing those things that are sacred about me that I've buried or society's buried or whatnot. And I keep going and I keep looking, just a gentle gaze. Eventually, I come to this core, this Buddha nature, this bright, brilliant, infinite, timeless core. I don't even know what it's capable of. And together, that infinite core and all my surface level pettiness, that combination together is the sacred whole of me. And it's the sacred whole of you as well. So, in the next several moments of silence, allow your mind the freedom to wander this sacred landscape of you, the earth, the cosmos. Allow a spirit of wonder to embrace you and allow the awe of this precious human life to be a faithful guide. Enjoy this practice. All is sacred, and that includes me. I am sacred. All is sacred, and that includes me. I am sacred. All is sacred, and that includes me. I am sacred. Friends, I'd like to take us a step toward the conclusion of this practice with this final thought, and that is a choice. That as we navigate the landscapes of our lives, as we tap into those environments of nature and sky that really elicit that spirit of awe and wonder, remember the choice that we always are carrying with us is to engage destruction or to engage healing and nurturance. At any given time, looking at the conditions of our lives, we can engage destruction and we can engage healing and nurturance. We're going to do both. That is what it means to be alive. We're going to engage in activities and actions and reactions that have destructive properties. That is a given. And we're also going to engage in activities and reactions and so on that encourage nurturance and healing. And the two can work together. So whenever we're engaging in nurturance, we take stock of those qualities, of those conditions. And when we engage in anything that causes destruction and harm and confusion, we remember the qualities of our nurturance to bring ease, to turn down the heat of our destruction, to minimize the fallout and the consequence. It's not about making excuses. It's not about being too lenient or too quick to forgive. It's about using these actions as fodder for our continued growth and expansion. And when we can do that, and with continued practice, what we drop are the judgments, the expectations, the frustrations. All of that is just baggage that we no longer need. And now we've got these wide eyes to look at our actions, our reactivity, and our responses. And with clear, open eyes, we see our choices. We see the results and the fruits of our choices. And eventually I become, you become living, breathing instruments of peace. What a beautiful aspiration to open to. Thank you, friends. All right, we're going to take a moment to do a little bit of integration here. for our practice and our exploration of openness. And one of the things that I want to emphasize about exploring the spirit of openness and the spaciousness that it can bring, and looking at nature and remembering that I am nature. I am nature's, I'm just yet another manifestation of nature. And so when we tap into nature, it is a kind of homecoming. It's a kind of sacredness that happens. And while this all may sound poetic and ethereal and all of that's nice, again, the emphasis here is about understanding oneself and one's relationship to oneself, my understanding my nature, my relationship to nature outside of me, manifesting within me, all of that understanding, so that when I interface with the world, I move, I speak, I step, I breathe in such a way that I reduce violence and harm and confusion. That's it. That is, it's not only an aspiration, it's a calling, really. And and it's one of those things to just look around for a moment and to see all the violence that's perpetuated, to be curious and open to the conditioning that's happening, to look at the way we fall prey to the stories of gender, addiction, success, money, intelligence, and so forth. And when we look at a tree, for instance, I don't know that anyone would go to a tree and say, you should be more like this. Hey, Mr. Willow, have you ever thought of growing a little bit more like Maple over there? It's madness. We would never, ever do that. And yet we give ourselves so much permission and so much space to do it to ourselves. And we're petty about it, and we're judgmental and diminishing. And not only that, but we really strip ourselves and each other of that intimate connection to the brilliance and magnificence of nature. We strip ourselves of access to awe. And that is a great social harm. And it is enormously violent. And so to just take a moment to entertain the possibility of the sacredness, to just be open a little bit, is really something special. Today, I heard a reflection of a Sangha member who listened to a podcast video from social media, getting off of social media. I heard that too, and I loved it. And one of the take home messages that I heard from why this individual was motivated to get off social media was this individual now had access to a sacred view, a picture from Mount Everest, of this glorious view that he himself had without actually having to climb Mount Everest. And he felt like it was such a violation of the sacredness of that view that only people who journey in that way ought to be able to have. And so he was like, how am I seeing this? Like, it's really not fair. So he had a very strong visceral reaction to not wanting access to that. So he got himself off social media. He's like, it's a weird word to use the word deserving, but he's like, how am I seeing this? Like, that is something very, very special, very, very sacred. Now, I had a different response. I was like, I will never climb Mount Everest, not in a million, billion, zillion years, never. So I really appreciated the view. I'm like, wow, to be able to see that and tap into it. And I know it's not going to be the same thing had I been there. So I really loved it, but I appreciated that somebody else had a very different perspective. The point is, there's space for all of it. And in that space, the personal question and the complicated question is, am I doing harm? Am I perpetuating more misery, more confusion, more destruction, more harm, more violence, aggression? You get it. Am I doing that? Because I certainly have the capacity. Or am I endeavoring to live a life of intentionality so that I do a little less harm in the world? We always have that choice. We don't always choose wisely. And even in that little sacred moment is an opportunity to do something different next time. And that's the sacredness of this practice. That's what makes it truly a holy experience. All right. Before we dedicate this practice, I want to remind you that 1 o'clock, we're going to meet for Recovery Dharma. We're going to continue our work with this book, The Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. This is SatiSeva, and we're going to explore chapter 8, which is developing concentration. The image we're going to be contemplating is the yin yang. And we're going to be contemplating this for the next 3 days, today, tomorrow, and Friday. And I want to share with you some very important things about this. I want you to, I'm going to be teaching about how to contemplate this image beyond the obvious of what you see, the obvious duality happening here. So that's happening. That begins at 1 o'clock. Lo has posted in our chat the link to Soul Center. You can see the various things that we have going on. Immediately, or importantly, is on the equinox. We're having a little retreat here at Soul Center. It's a silent retreat, and I'm kind of treating it like an open house. So if you're around on that Saturday in the afternoon, I believe it's Saturday. Yes, Saturday afternoon. If you'd like to come by and come into the sanctuary and sit in silence for any amount of time, I would welcome you to do that. Likewise, online. You can just join us and come in and tap into a very sacred space. At the very end of this retreat, we'll do a little ritual of breaking the silence and then a little spring equinox ritual. So that should be pretty beautiful. I believe it's on Saturday 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 4. And so it's just a nice time to come in and be quiet. If you want to come in and be quiet, but you can't be still. So if you want to bring your knitting needles, or if you want to color, something like that, you can do that. Not everybody can have silence and stillness. So meet yourself where you are, celebrate yourself as you are, and bring that sacredness to practice. I think that's a beautiful way to celebrate the renewal of the spring equinox. On Saturday, April 4th, we have a beautiful teacher coming in. Stevie is her name. She's a nutritionist, and she's going to teach about sugar and our relationship to sugar and how sugar works in the body and how we can use healthy sugars to really regulate our system. And so I'm really excited about that. Read all about it on the website. Remember, these sessions are recorded. You can go back and listen to them. They are all freely offered. We've got so much content out there, and I hope it serves you and your practice. Let's go ahead and bring our bodies into a posture of delight, whatever that means for you. A posture of delight. Ah. Let's begin by dedicating this practice to the ancestral people of the land in which we inhabit. So in the United States as we know it is a very young country. But it was populated by indigenous people since time immemorial. Is that right? Immemorial? Is that the word? Immemorial? Since time memorial? Immemorial? You get what I mean. But that history in the United States and those references have really been diminished and in some instances entirely erased. And so I'd like to dedicate this practice of honoring how all is sacred to the indigenous people of the Spokane area. This is the Spokane tribe, the Kalispel tribe, to name two. So if you live somewhere in the United States, please find out of the ancestral people who stewarded your lands and give them great honor. We have a friend who is from the United Kingdom and the great Celtic people. There are some extraordinary ancient sites in Ireland and Scotland, in northern England, even that give us an idea of the Neolithic people that lived thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago and survived the weather, the temperature, the harshness of some of these landscapes. And there are incredible monuments to the ancestors of those lands. Many of you may even have connection to those ancestral lands. I do, certainly. And so when I go visit those parts of the world, I feel a real connection to the landscape there. It's because I'm from there. So, dedicating this practice in memory of our ancestors. Let's dedicate this practice to all those people in the present moment who are perpetuating aggression and hostility and violence for all the reasons they do. And may they awaken to their own sacredness. May they awaken to the sacredness of others, and may they find avenues out of aggression, hostility, confusion, and chaos toward avenues of peace, reconciliation, cooperation, collaboration, community, love, humanity. I dedicate this practice to the millions of people who are struggling under social conditioning and social stigma. May they find relief, maybe in your gaze and your presence and the warmth radiating from your heart because you had an opportunity to practice today, exploring the nature of your wisdom, your heart, your sacredness. May you have the courage and freedom to share it. I dedicate this practice to all beings everywhere. May we all find ease, joy, wonder, and may we rest in soft places of sacred embrace. Thank you for your practice today, friends. We'll see you next time. Namaste.